Can you hear me all right, Lee? No? My light is on. Can you hear me now? Is that better? Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I've got 4 o'clock, Thursday, November 20th, and we'll go ahead and call the meeting of the Flagstaff Water Commission to order. And let's begin with roll call. If we could have roll call, Andrea?
Chair Doba,
Here?
Commissioner Bills, Commissioner Paul, Commissioner Watzek, Commissioner Nauman,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia,
Here.
Commissioner Vane.
Here. Thank you. I'm pleased to say that we do have a quorum for today's meeting. We just have a quorum for today's meeting. We'll begin with item number 3 on the agenda, which is public participation. And this offers the public an opportunity to address the commission on any item that is not on the written agenda. If you do wish to address the commission, please state your name and address for the record. The open meeting law prohibits the commission from discussing or taking any action on an item that's not listed on the prepared agenda, but the commission may respond to criticism made by those addressing the commission, ask staff to review a matter, or ask that a matter be placed on a future agenda. And public comments should be limited to 3 minutes of reading time. Do we have anybody here for public participation this afternoon? I'm not seeing anybody. With that, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes that were attached to our agenda when it came out. Fairly lengthy minutes from our last meeting. Hopefully, the commissioners have had an opportunity to take a look at the minutes. If not, we can take a minute right now, and I will wait for a motion to approve the minutes from last month's meeting.
I move to approve the minutes as written.
We have a motion to approve the minutes. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Matthew, thank you. Any discussion? Motion's been made and seconded to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are approved. Thank you. Item number 5, new business. We're going to be getting a presentation from Jolene, I believe, on the status of the lead and copper service line inventory that has been required of us. So, Jolene, would you like to take over from here?
Sure. Thanks, Commissioner Dova. Good afternoon, Commission members. I'm Jolene Montoya, the Regulatory Compliance Section Director for the Water Services. So like Mr. Dova said, we're giving an update and kind of look the next steps for the EPA rules regarding the lead and copper rule improvement. So before that, for some of you that may have not been here last year when I did a presentation, I want to give a little bit of background. So before 2022, our lead and copper rule was first promulgated in 1991. We had to take 90% of the samples every 3 years. We were on a reduced monitoring frequency. If our sampling didn't meet requirement, then we'd have to do corrosion controls at measures. But at Lake Mary Water Treatment Plant, we adjust to a pH to help with the corrosion control. There you go. So, like I said, our current sampling plan is we're on a triannual sampling schedule. So we do 30 sampling sites every 3 years. The single-family structures have to be built between 1983 and 1988. We do the first draw, usually first thing in the morning, from the homeowners collecting them. Then we go pick them up and then ship them to the lab. So next year, 2026, is going to be the last time we have to do this under the old rules. We thought it was going to be 2023, but then with the new rule improvements that we still have one more scheduled for next year. As for the results we've gotten over the years, we've never exceeded an action level for lead or copper. The highest level for lead, we did have a 14 parts per billion, or micrograms per liter. As you can see in the table, we are well below the 90 percentile that we've had to meet for those past years. So in 2022, the lead and copper rule revision, the LCRR rules, were put in place by EPA. That started us down the path of doing the lead and copper service line inventory, or the LSLI. So we had to do an inventory, or we still are, doing an inventory of both public and private service water lines. We had to categorize them into lead, non-lead, but specify if they're copper or plastic for non-lead. If they're unknown, we haven't figured that out yet, or they're galvanized requiring replacement. So last year on October 16th, on the due date, we submitted our initial inventory to ADQ through a 120 water portal. As of this year, this is where we stand. So last year, we actually had 10% increase in our known, so we've made improvements. We also completed our unknowns went down by 7%, so we are definitely making some headway on our inventory for the service lines. We added another 200 new service lines into the inventory from last year. And then last year we had to send out letters to the public if they had unknowns or the galvanized replying replacement. And so we sent about 7,900 letters, and we also hand delivered a bunch, especially to the apartment complexes, for the managers to be able to pass those along to all the apartment tenants. So this is kind of a flow chart of what we've been doing. So right now we're stuck in the little continuous loop and the continuous improvement. How we got here is we've hired a bunch of AmeriCorps interns through NAU with their health program, which have been very helpful in doing a lot of records review for us. So we're kind of exhausted on the records review. So now we are relying on some of our long-term water distribution employees that know what's in the ground, and then backing that up with, depending on the age, and some records that we've already had on hand. The field crews, when they're out, are instructed to update whenever they see anything. Or in certain areas, they can go into their collector app or to their GIS app to be able to mark what service line material is visually. So we're doing that as an on basis of whenever they're in the ground. As you can imagine, the private side is considerably harder to find for records. We do have some public information that we gathered from last year from the letters. We're still working our way through that. And then we're also working on maybe getting some contractors in to help with identifying some other service lines. So this is what the public sees. So because we are a public water system over 50,000 people, we have to have a public-facing lead service line inventory. So we have a link on our website. If you go to the link, you can scroll into the picture on the left with the little bubbles. Those are the amount of services. It could be homes, it could be businesses of that nature. And if you click on the circle itself, then you can see what's on the right. And then to have more check marks, so then you click on a check mark, then you can see the actual address and what we have in our inventory currently. So our next stage is the lead and copper rule improvements. So I'm going to give a quick high overview of all the rules that became in place of October 8th last year with EPA. There's a lot of moving parts to each of these sections, but a lot of things aren't due for a few years. So the service line inventory. So like I said, we submitted an initial baseline. So now EPA wants us to submit a baseline inventory by November 1st of 2027. That doesn't mean we're not currently updating and working and submitting into ADEQ as we go about our business and finding all the unknowns. This new inventory does include identifying connector pieces. So they can be called goosenecks or pigtails. The picture on the right that's a pigtail from our water distribution group. They're pretty much short segments of piping that attach service lines from like meters to the meter, out of the meter, sometimes from a main into a service line. It cannot exceed 3 feet is the definition for this connector piece. And then the other part to the service line inventory, we have to continue sending those letters to people who have unknowns or the GRR, the galvanized requiring replacement in our system. So we will be sending out another batch of letters here in the next few weeks, because since they are due at the end of this year, and then we will be doing the same thing next fall of sending letters again. Other big piece of the new rules is the pipe replacement plan. So we have to have a public-facing plan that's submitted to ADQ and EPA by November 1st of 2027. This plan has to map out how we're going to fully replace any lead or GRR service lines that are under our control within the next 10 years or even less. So we are assuming the 2037 ADQ has not made that abundantly clear, but we assume since the plan has to be in 2027, that we have till 2037. So like I said, this plan has to be publicly accessible because we are over that 50,000 threshold, and then posted online. The replacement rate will have to be 10% of the lines that include GRR, the lead, and unknown lines in our inventory every year, and we'll have to do calculations every year for what those 10% will be. The other moving part is two different kind of sampling plans. The TAP sampling plan, so different from what we currently do with single-family homes between a certain age range. We now will have to pick from our inventory. There is a tier system, so 1 through 5 tier. We'll have to find 60 locations as directed by EPA of those in that inventory for that tier system. And then we have to start doing the sampling start in January 1st, 2028. For schools and childcare facilities, it's a different kind of plan. We have to submit an inventory of all the facilities that are within our water distribution system or that we're serving by November 1st of 2027. And with this sampling plan, we have a new lead threshold. Instead of the 0.015 micrograms per liter, we will now be 0.010 micrograms per liter that we will have to adhere to. And we also have lots of public outreach we'll have to do. We have to deliver notices and educational material customers when we're doing work in the area that we have a known lead or a known GRR. There are certain criteria that that EPA has designated for that we have to provide pictures and filters when needed and when certain activities are completed. And then we also have to make some additions to our consumer confidence report that is quickly going to be coming out twice a year instead of just once a year. So moving forward, we're still going to continue doing our work on finding materials for unknowns. Like I said, we're looking into having maybe contractors help us for the private side of the service lines. We have to have 2 points of reference if we do visuals. So that makes things a little more complicated. We're definitely going to follow up on the information we've already received from homeowners that actually have replaced their lines and making sure they have documentation that we could use to say this is what it is. We're working on a pipe replacement plan. We're solidifying our public outreach plans with all the different types that we have to put into place. We're starting our work on the sampling plans for both the TAP sampling plans and the schools and childcare facilities. And then we're still waiting on quite a bit of guidance and templates from ADQ and EPA. They have promised them. We still have yet to see them. We have EPA fact sheets that we are going off for information right now, but ADQ has not issued a whole lot of guidance. And with that, are there any questions?
Commission, any questions?
Jolene, thank you very much. A couple of questions just for really my education. Galvanized requiring replacement. Does all galvanized require replacement, or is this just a time-based thing that after a certain period you say it needs replacement? Or is there actual inspection?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Commissioner Irving. So we're still working through that right now. We were going to go on the premise of any galvanized line we have, we will probably need to replace just simply due to the fact of the age of the pipe and the fact that we cannot disprove we never had lead before that line. And that's part of the definition of the GRR is that if there's lead that was in the line before the galvanized line, then that definitely is a galvanized that needs to be replaced. But if we can't say whether or not there was, we're kind of assuming we will have to.
Oh, thank you. You also mentioned, made a distinction about service lines under your control. Which are under your control and which aren't? Do I assume that, private residences are not under your control and it's what, city facilities that are under your control, or can you explain that?
Yeah, so definitely our public side, everything on our, on our side of the meter is under our control. EPA has defined as under our control wherever our system has access, may it be a physical, legal, to conduct a full service line replacement. So that's just the definition we have. We still don't know what that actually means, but that's what's in writing.
And then am I correct that residential service lines are not under your control?
We're not sure. We're still waiting for the guidance from ADEQ to let us know if we have, if they give us legal or physical access to that line, then is that now under our control?
And of course, under control means then what's the financial responsibility? If it's under your control, is it your financial responsibility as well, or is that up to the residential owners?
We're still working through that. So from what we can glean from the rules, we think the private side will have to be the customer's responsibility, but there are um, other caveats in the replacement plan that we have to make provisions for having a funding strategy as well for customers that wouldn't be able to pay for it. So we're still working through the nuances of what that all means.
What do present building codes require for service lines, or what are we building with today?
Usually it's copper or the PEX, the plastic. Those are the two most commons that are used.
Thanks again.
John, did you have a question?
What is the required pH that the water is supposed to be at? To prevent corrosion, I guess.
Thank you for the question. We keep it around pH of 8. It's gives us a little bit of buffer above that 7 neutrality so that it's not acidic, and that seems to prevent the corrosion.
Super. A while back, remember one of the older schools had a problem with, I think it related to drinking fountains and lead-lined containment areas in the drinking fountains, and they exceeded by quite a bit the lead rule. I mean, the limit for lead in the water. So that just, like for a school, what part is the city responsible for and what part is the school responsible for in terms of the lead rule?
So for the sampling plan or for
Yeah, the sampling plan, I mean, you could, if you have a lot of different, if it's a complicated plumbing system, I mean, you could sample one place and find lead and sample somewhere else and not find lead, if you know what I mean, depending upon how the school was constructed and all kinds of different variables.
Well, thank you for the question. So there are requirements in the EPA fact sheets that we have to, I think schools are 5 locations where we have to sample, and childcare are 2, and they specify, I think, like drinking fountains, faucets. So there's guidance in there to say where in these places we'll have to sample from, and that will be our responsibility to make sure those get sampled. And then we have to pass along that information back to them.
So it's the city's responsibility to sample water within the entity, whether it's a private home or a school or a business then.
Well, according to, for all the sampling, it'll probably be a partnership, considering schools will probably be easier for us to be able to go in and help do that, because in first thing in the morning, we could be able to get into their homes. We've always had the homeowner do it, just because we're not going into a private residence at 5, 6 in the morning, depending on when they get up for work, to take the sample. But like our laboratory staff has very detailed instructions of how to take the sample, when to take the sample, and then picks it up from them. So there's a lot of communication with the homeowners.
But just so I understand, I'm trying to get a handle on the sampling a little bit. So in a private residence, you would want to go in and sample the water before water is used in the house in the morning. And is that kind of the goal, to see how much lead is leaching into the water?
Yeah, for the lead and copper rule, and how it stands now, like the old and the new rules, that it has to be first draw in the morning after it's sit at least 6 to 8 hours.
And refresh my memory, what's the composition of galvanized pipe? What metals are in it?
I don't know that.
I was just wondering why galvanized was a problem. It must have some lead in the mix, but
Well,
don't know.
I think the theory is that, oh, you want to? Oh, that if lead before galvanized could leach out and then the galvanized could absorb it. And so there would be like lead inside the galvanized.
Thank you. Zinc is one of the parts of the composition, and as Jolene said, that there's something about galvanized metal that will sequester lead and then potentially release it later under certain conditions.
Thank you. That makes sense.
I'll Google it while we're talking.
Any more, do we have any more questions from the commissioners? I've got a couple if we don't. Matthew?
Okay, I know that some of some utilities have challenged the law, and I know litigation is ongoing on which portion is going to be the responsibility of the city versus the ownership of the residents. So have you looked into that?
No, I have not. I didn't know there were people challenging it. I will look into that. Thank you.
Jolene, how do we select the participants for the sampling in the residential areas? Are they all city employees or?
Do you mean the current sampling?
Because we
ones or
used to do that.
I think some still maybe, or a former city employee, but no. The single family houses have to be between 1983 and 1988, and those are ever actually dwindling. But there's a list with a little extra than 30 in case those people don't want us to come in. But that's how they were chosen of the date of the year, and they were willing to let us
Yeah.
participate.
Oh, I think, as I recall, majority of the public is willing to participate in programs like that because they want to know the results of what they have, where they're located. Galvanized pipe, we can't have a lot of that in the system, I wouldn't think. Do we have a handle on that yet at all?
So at the current status, we have a little over 900 lines we have identified as galvanized.
As galvanized?
Mhm.
And when we do the inventories, are we just opening up the meter box and looking at what's going into the meter and what's going out?
That's one of the ways we can do the verification. Right, most of it we've been doing from the lead ban from 1988. I think the state said June. They had a date. There's the EPA one, but then our state had a date that was hard. That if they were built after that date, then they wouldn't have the lead. Of course, the galvanized lines. A lot of it's been, I think, records and our long-term employees who know, at least on our side, what the galvanized are in our city. And I think some of their knowledge of what's on the other side. But yes, the meter box has been some of the work, but not a lot of the work.
Okay, I imagine that would be in some of the older areas of town where we're finding that kind of pipe as well. And then I see the limit is going to be reduced in the future on lead. But do we foresee that as an issue based on the sampling results that we've had going down from 15 to 10?
As far as I know, I think we are going to be fairly good. I know we've had at least one over the 10 that would be that's coming in place because it was a 14, which is still under the 15 we've had. I don't have all the data. Krista's online. She may be able to say how many we've had maybe over the 10, or we could get you that information later.
Really important to keep that pH up to 8 in the system. So, any other questions? Oh, Rob?
One more. I gather you've had mailings to city residents. I'm curious what kind of a reaction you've received to the mailings. Are people receptive to the information? Are any people upset or concerned? What kind of public reaction are we getting?
We've had all sorts of that. We had some that were very concerned, but we would talk them through, what's going on. We've had some that just want to know if they needed to do anything. I think a lot of the majority of like, I got this letter, do I need to do anything? Some, we've had quite a few fill out our survey. I want to say maybe 40 or 50 people to like try and help. So it's been run the gamut of anywhere from like, I don't know if they even read the letter to like, I'm freaking out.
Does that suggest anything for the future? Future communications on this topic?
So for this year's letters, we still have the same letter we sent out last year because that has all the mandatory information we have to tell them. But we're also putting another cover letter on for people who are getting this for like the second time of like, this is still, we still don't know, or you just still have a galvanized. But now we can say we are going to have a replacement plan for those galvanized people in the next couple of years. So to help them understand that we're working on a plan and you will have a definitive answer in 2 years. We think it'll either help with people understanding that it's the same thing, or the new people may still have questions. But I think this is as much as we can do.
Has your public outreach person reviewed those letters, those communications?
Yes, Sarah Langley actually just worked with us this week to make sure everything was up to snuff with her.
Yeah, thank you.
Jolene, just let me make sure it's clear in my head. In the future, even if we're not exceeding the limits for lead and copper, we have to have a plan in place to replace any lead pipes that we find in the system or galvanized pipes that we have in the system,
Yes, that's correct.
which is going to cost some money for sure.
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
It's kind of a geeky question, but what technique is used when you send it out? Do you know? I don't expect you to know, but you might know. Is it ICBMS or is it AA or
You mean the sampling technique itself?
the testing
The
technique?
testing. I have it off the top of my head. I can tell you it's like 208 method.
Okay. Jolene, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very enlightening. Good job. Thank you. Lee?
Commissioner Nauman, would you like to know what the galvanizing process is? You dip steel into molten zinc. On the outside of the pipe, it ends up predominantly zinc, but it also forms some sort of compounds with the steel, so it kind of changes as you go to the middle, but it's just zinc. Yeah, or maybe it just doesn't rust like steel does, or it has corrosion resistant properties. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Lee. Okay, let's move on. Next item we have, we're going to old business. Discussion on reclaimed water code and policy updates. We talked about this a little bit at our last meeting, and in looking at our meeting notes, I can see some of the items that we were discussing back then. Who would like to kick this off? Tamara, I see you standing there.
Test. Okay. Yes, thank you so much, Commissioner Doba. Thanks everyone. Tamara Lawless, Water Conservation Program Manager. Got some really fun discussion today. I printed out some, these are just sample codes that I kind of researched and pulled up mostly from Nevada. So just like interesting ones to look at, and I'll go ahead and pull it up on the computer too. And then Aaron has a few paper copies if anybody in the audience wants a paper copy too. So let's see here. Yeah, so I have three kind of general topics on the agenda to go over. So I believe the first one that was in the staff summary is about when we are, thinking about bringing this, our water conservation ordinance back to council, reopening it and thinking about making some changes and some revisions. Are we interested in adding any provisions about water features or artificial lakes, man-made lakes? So, the kind of like Southern Nevada Water Authority area has a lot of restrictions on water uses. And so I have some examples from the city of Henderson and the city of North Las Vegas. I'll kind of like breeze through it, and you have, obviously kind of the copies there. But so for the city of Henderson, they have restrictions on water features. So they essentially do not allow new water features on, areas in the city or customers. So if they're provided water service, even if they're not in the city limit, there are things that are exempted. So they're saying we're not talking about swimming pools, spas, hot tubs. We're talking about, let me see if they define it here. So that's here it says water feature means any artificially constructed or installed stream, lazy river, fountain, waterfall, reflective pool, pond, lake, body of water, waterfall, swimming pool, blah, blah, blah. So they have like this long explanation here on what they mean by water features. So they have a restriction on those. They do say, they are exempting things like irrigation reservoirs for a golf course. So that is one of the things that is exempted from this piece of code here. And then also things like this is saying if it's like part of a heat exchanger for a cooling system, or if it's inside of a climate controlled enclosed structure. So that's, one example of a way that water features are managed by the city of Henderson. They do have, if you look, like they do allow small water features. So it's saying like, we do allow this single water feature of not more than 25 square feet on a residential property. So it's basically saying like, we're not talking about your little stream, but we're talking about things that are larger. And then also City of Henderson has something about artificial lakes. So as of 2022, they do not allow any further artificial lakes on property in the city corporate boundaries or on property that receives water service. And so they also have a definition here of artificial lake. So it means an outdoor body of water that is artificially constructed or installed, privately owned. And it's basically saying something that's part, for scenic, aesthetic, landscape purposes. It's not talking about water features like water parks. And then City of North Las Vegas has kind of similar codes on like man-made water features. So for example, you see in their code, they wrote, it is unlawful to use any water or reclaimed water. So they're saying either way, doesn't matter what type of water it is, in our town limit for filling or refilling a man-made decorative water feature defined herein. And so, they kind of go through what their like exemptions are too. So, they're saying like pre-existing water features, so things get grandfathered in. So like, for example, in this like section about man-made lakes, they talk about all the things that are exempt. So like bodies of water that existed before the code, areas that are part of a wetland, bodies of water that are part of a recreational facility that's open to the public, bodies of water that store water for flood control, bodies of water located on a golf course, which are used for the purpose of storing the golf course's irrigation water. So you've seen that a few times, that they typically would exempt water that's being used as part of an irrigation system. And then I saw in one of them, maybe I passed it already, but they like exempted things like splash pads and things like that. They're not talking about that type of public use. They're talking about more like aesthetic, kind of like water features. So that's like the first discussion point is like, are we interested in adding any type of language into the water conservation code that would say, we want any type of future restrictions on aesthetic water features or man-made lakes, anything like that. And if that after you discuss if that's a yes, then essentially next time I come back, I would say, okay, I kind of synthesized our discussion and here's what I think would make sense for the code to pitch to Flagstaff. So I'd bring another draft of that forward next time we chat about it. So why don't we chat about that topic first, and then we can move on to my like next discussion topic. Correct. Yep. Exactly. Yeah, it's kind of, I just wanted you to see like how some other jurisdictions are managing it. None of it, I didn't like wordsmith anything yet for our use. I just wanted to kind of hear your like gut feelings on it before we kind of move forward with any ideas.
Well, I think that we did talk about this a little bit the last time that we were discussing the Reclaim Water Code. Unfortunately, I wish we had more of our commissioners here tonight for the discussion. We do have a quorum. It was my understanding by kind of a thumbs up with the commission that they were in favor of looking at some wording
Okay.
that might prohibit future development or construction of lakes that are built for aesthetic purposes. And I'll throw that out on the table to the commission for, did you interpret our discussion the same way I just explained it? And it would be kind of a, from this date forward, when the code is amended, I think that I'm real concerned because of what we already have developed over the years in the system, that it would be like opening a can of worms to say, we just don't allow any of them. But if we go from this point forward, I think it would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, typically anything that already exists is grandfathered in this type of code. Yes.
Yeah, they established a date when they put it in effect.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think we have had conversations maybe more broadly in the past. I don't know if with the commission, but with some other groups about, do we need to have discussions as a community on what types of industries are appropriate for future uses? Like, I can't imagine that we ever would have a water park in Flagstaff because the climate isn't very favorable for it, but do we need to add any type of that language, or do we just focus strictly on aesthetic water features is what we want to make sure that is prohibited?
So being as you brought up the subject of water parks, is that something that we would want to address?
Right. Yeah, I did notice at least one of the codes is, I think it did mention something about water parks, that one of the communities maybe is restricting future water parks. I think maybe it was North Las Vegas. I think maybe they have maybe more supply constraints, but yeah.
Is this an outdoor water park versus
I
indoor?
assume they're talking about outdoor because they mentioned a few times like that if it's a recirculating system that it is exempt.
We need a definition of a water
Yeah.
park.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, have you looked at the Phoenix area and Tucson and what their regulations are down there? And has the state legislature weighed in on anti-regulating of such?
I mean, I regularly participate with like conservation staff like across the state, and usually we tend to be a little bit more restrictive than some of the other areas, and like we would be the first, I think, to enact something like this. Yeah.
The first to enact something like this with regards to water parks, or prohibiting future development of aesthetic lakes?
As far as I know, both.
Both.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I think that the reason we see more of this in kind of the southern Nevada areas because of supply constraints, that they are under much, because they're mostly reliant on Colorado River water, that the constraints are they have more issues dealing with kind of supply and future planning. And so I'll get to it a little bit later, but they actually have like prohibitions on any future turf, for example. Like they're not letting even like residential future developments put in any turf because it's an issue for their long-term supply. So things there are very strict. I don't think that we have the same supply constraints, right? But we're more just trying to envision like what do we see as like appropriate uses into Flagstaff as we consider, these large projects that could come down the line for adding supply here.
Well, I think it's fortunate that we don't have to depend on the Colorado River for a source of water supply. And we're fortunate to periodically get adequate runoff into Upper Lake Mary for a surface water supply. And we've got a good groundwater supply. But we're seeing what's happening in other areas of the state with their groundwater supplies. We're seeing more active management areas that are in the process of being formed as subsequent active management areas because of land subsidence and all the other issues that they're having with depleting groundwater. And it's just, we want to stay proactive here so we don't get in that kind of a situation. And I think that's just a good reason why we need to look at things like, do we really want to use our precious source of groundwater to build aesthetic lakes? We're still in a high desert area of the country. We're not, we don't have Lake Michigan right next to us or anything like that. So we need to recognize that.
Yeah, I do think there is, some concern from like our sustainability team that as we see warming trends across our state and the country, that people with second homes are going to be spending more time, right? Like as the southern part of the state gets warmer and warmer, maybe, more people will be spending more significant chunks of the year up here, and that, maybe it makes sense to do prudent planning now of like, do we want, Flagstaff to be, it got hot here. Now I'm going to come up to my second home and I'm going to install a pool now because, I'm spending 6 months of the year here, like just kind of doing some future planning on, what do we think it's going to look like in 50 years or something like that. So anyway, I agree with what you're saying. I'm happy to maybe try to draft something that's a little bit all encompassing about kind of like aesthetic water features and other man-made amenity lakes or something like that. And we can kind of look at that verbiage next time if that makes sense. Aaron and I were thinking like we might want to create exemptions for things like, like environmentally beneficial. Like sometimes we have areas where you're like filling a tank for wildlife use, things like that. So we might want to just kind of think about what uses make sense. That wouldn't, I think that wouldn't be like aesthetic, right? But I think someone could make an argument of saying like, well, we created this pond and now all the elk are coming to drink from it. So it's at this point like a wildlife tank. How do we kind of like look at that boundary between like what's aesthetic and what might have like beneficial environmental uses?
Well, I also think, with regards to it being aesthetic or not, we could, and if you're talking about something to base exemptions on, we could look at the amount of water that it uses.
Yeah, like a surface area calculation or something.
Right.
But the other thing to think about too is the cost. If we have more additional demand for water, ultimately that we're going to have to increase our capacity to produce water. And that incurs a cost on everybody who uses the water. So, I mean, I think Payson already has an anti-turf rule, don't they?
If they do, I haven't read it, but I will look into it. Payson. Lee.
Thank you. I'd make a point also as it incurs additional cost with storage for that water and delivering it as well as producing it. And then the comment I was going to make is we're going to have to be careful with our wording between aesthetic lakes, recreational lakes, and fire suppression. We already had somebody come in whose intention was to build an aesthetic lake, but they were selling it on the idea that helicopters could dip out of it for fire suppression. So it's going to be a little tricky.
Yeah, we could build those all over the place, couldn't we?
Yeah, two comments. One,
Yeah.
just to build on Ron's comment, he used the word being proactive. I guess I like a similar word here is showing leadership within the state. I think this would be a major move and a model for perhaps the rest of the state, something we might be able to put in place. To Lee's point, that the definitions will become tricky and there may be a variety of ways of selling these things. Perhaps for us, amenity lakes or aesthetic lakes, we would have, I'm not trying to create a bureaucracy here, but perhaps there would be some application process that could be reviewed, and there may be some valid situations, whether it's for helicopter dipping or whatever. And so it's not just completely black and white. We may allow some, some avenues for either appeal or for discussion. On that front, one other thing I would like to see mentioned is any amenity lake that is approved or aesthetic lake that is approved might require, lining and, and best practices in terms of, conservation within what they do have. Again, that's tricky wording to get that all in appropriately, but those are some of my thoughts.
Thanks.
Tamara, do you have enough information to move ahead on this one item then?
I think so on that one, yeah. And then, so my next subheading in the discussion is, I did find that one of the jurisdictions provided an exemption for recreational turf or athletic fields. So this is, I think this is close to the bottom of page 2. So this is a challenge that I think I've mentioned here before, which is that a handful of like FUSD sites and city parks are on potable water, which right now is, under the part of the code that would require every other day watering. And our parks team has expressed that that is not always feasible for them. So I just wanted you to see an example of how another city, basically they require if a site can't comply, they basically have them submit like a conservation plan that says like how they are maximizing efficiency. And they also have to explain, like why operationally they cannot adhere to the watering schedule. And then they also have to have a sign that basically says like, this facility is under its own watering schedule so that the public sees that and is not like, hey, how come they're watering on Monday or whatever it is, because we do get a lot of those calls. So I just wanted you to see example of that. If that seems like an okay direction for you, I'll bring back another draft of that next time and say like, here's kind of a provision that we could provide for those very small handful of sites that are on potable water that are irrigating like an athletic field. There might even be like a couple sites at NAU. I'd have to check.
Tamara, are you speaking to a specific item here? Can you point out
It's
which one
like,
it is?
yeah, sorry. So if you, oh, maybe it's not, oh, sorry. Yeah, it's way down. So this is page 1, 2, 3, 4. I think it's the bottom of page 4. It starts with possible exemption from watering restrictions and requirements for an active/programmed recreation turf area or athletic field turf area.
Tamara, I know there are disadvantages and advantages to artificial turf.
Yes.
And that some people don't want to ever play on artificial turf, blah,
Yeah.
blah, blah. But obviously it takes a lot less watering. So,
Yeah, I mean, so our like stance so far on it has generally been not in favor because of like, 1, microplastics, 2, a lot of artificial turf ends up having to be irrigated because it is so hot that they have to cool it. It like absorbs a lot of heat. And so they end up having to spray it down routinely. I think that's less challenging here than in like the valley. I think in the valley they are having to spray it more. There are some artificial turf segments at NAU. And we could ask them if they ever have to cool it for use. But I mean, maybe as like materials change, maybe they'll come up with a material that doesn't absorb as much heat or doesn't degrade into something that is like environmentally hazardous, and maybe we'll kind of come over to more on the positive side. But for now, we don't like, for example, offer it as like a rebate option, just because we feel like there are too many negatives for the potential positives.
So kind of keep an eye out for artificial turf that isn't a worse problem.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I know Emily was mentioning that maybe there's, what's that new material? Yeah, coconut fiber, maybe. Yeah, we'll see. I know. I mean, you always have these like loops of interconnected issues, right? Like, where are the coconuts coming from? Like, our places gonna be like monocultures of coconuts now for fields? I don't know. So, keeping an eye on it.
So
Yeah.
what color's the coconut turf?
So they,
I had to ask that question, I'm sorry.
is it brown? Is it white? I don't know. It's
Okay,
paint. Yeah.
all right.
Hopefully it's food grade or something. I don't know. We shall see.
Tamara?
Yes.
Just as you're developing the language for the exemptions for watering schedules, it occurs to me you might have something in there to the effect that if someone does want to, get this exemption so they can water every day or so forth, that they need to demonstrate at least some level of sophistication in terms
Yes.
of a management plan. And it doesn't necessarily need to be as sophisticated as what we saw at Pine Canyon, but
Yeah.
active moisture monitoring and so on and so forth. So they're not just saying, it's inconvenient for us to
Yeah.
do this and we're just going to water every day.
Totally.
That
Yeah.
If you choose to do that, you have to put some effort into it and have a, reasonable evidence for, when you choose to water.
Yeah, I agree. And I think having some requirements and having an application process will hopefully limit, the number of exemptions that we would have to utilize.
Tamara, presuming, we move forward in this direction by allowing, schools or the recreational fields to submit a plan for irrigation and post it so that it's visible to other folks. This would apply to reclaim water use as well. Potable
Yeah,
and
so
reclaim.
yeah, our proposal for the code, like the kind of tampering that we've been doing, does not include an every other day provision for reclaimed users anyway, right? So what we're looking
Right.
for reclaimed users is we're looking for not irrigating between 9 and 5 during the like hot months, and then not wasting water. So they wouldn't need to apply for this. So really the reason we would need to have this is for the small number of like potable users that are under the every other day rules, for them to be able to water Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then not water Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and have a schedule like that was kind of like abnormal for what we'd be used to.
Well, would reclaim water users be under the conservation schedule, the prohibitions, unless they submitted a plan then?
So we
No, or are
haven't
we
listed
not?
them for every other day, but we have them under, so the way we're like drafting the code right now shows that it would be not between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., but there's no limitations on days of the week.
Okay, so it's just a prohibition during the day that would apply to reclaimed water users unless they submitted a plan.
Yeah, so for reclaimed users, I
Yes.
don't think, so I think the way we wrote it was that, let me just pull it up, the draft here. Let's see. It's this one. So I added in a subsection. So there's a whole section for the potable system, and then I added in a subsection for the reclaim system here. So it says, these strategies shall govern the use of water by any user of the reclaim system. So under strategy 1, water awareness, the following uses are restricted or prohibited. No person shall irrigate except as provided. No outdoor watering activity shall be allowed between the hours of 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. during the months of May through September. Since we heard from the golf courses that they do have occasional needs to water like in the middle of the day if they have to in February or something. So we're just, focusing in on those like the hot months when our team is out driving the community looking for people irrigating in the middle of the day. I mean, right now we do have that challenge that we'll pull up somewhere like Sawmill, for example, and we'll see that, a business there is irrigating in the middle of the day. And then we're pulling up the GIS system. We're saying, ugh, they're on reclaimed water. All we can do is go in and say, it's not best practice to be watering at noon, even though it's not
Right.
against the rules. So we can just kind of say like, it's not recommended because it's evaporating and it's probably not saturating your soils very well. We really recommend another time of day. So this like provision would allow us to say like, it's actually not in our code that you can water at noon, even though you're a reclaimed user. So that would make enforcement easier for our team. And then it says wastewater as defined in section A. So that's just like one of the definitions at the beginning. So it says wasting water is using or expending potable or reclaimed water thoughtlessly, carelessly, or carelessly. Examples include but are not limited to allowing the water to run into the street or the gutter, allowing it to pool, irrigating during precipitation events, failing to repair leaks. And then it does say, the determination of wasting water shall be made by a representative of the city of Flagstaff. So that would actually include even failing to repair like a leaky amenity lake or something would be included in wasting water because it would be failing to repair a water leak.
I know we've had the wasting water section has been applicable to potable water use for a long time. Do we find many violators that fall into that category?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, throughout the season, our team will see ponding, an area where like the water is ponding like on a sidewalk or on like maybe a resident of an apartment complex will call and say, I don't know why, but there's always water outside my apartment. And then we'll go and see that there's, a broken line that they've been failing to repair. And the
okay.
apartment complex will say like, oh, we've been meaning to fix it. And we'll say, well, now it's drawn our attention. You have 2 weeks to get it fixed or we're going to fine you.
Okay.
So it kind of gives us like that teeth. Sometimes we'll see things like a broken, like sprinkler head, and now it's fountaining into the street. That is water waste. So we can say like, you need to fix that piece of your system as soon as possible.
Great. Okay.
Let's see. So I put like at the bottom of the discussion topics that I just wanted to mention that we might want to put in some considerations for future emerging technologies like smart meters or like smart irrigation systems. I think the thing that makes the most sense probably is just saying, it was Aaron and I were saying like, maybe we'll talk with legal and just see if we need to define in the ordinance, like the ways that we are allowed to enforce the ordinance so that it is clear that like, if we have a data system that gets more complex in the next few years and we can show according to our analyses, you're irrigating every day, even though we can't see it, it's in your backyard, that we still have the ability to say like, this does count as a violation of the ordinance. So previously, like our legal team was a little bit hesitant to say whether or not that is allowed, that we can enforce without like visually seeing it, even though we really didn't define that in the code previously, but maybe adding something that says like, City of Flagstaff can use these types of methods to enforce this code. It could be data analysis, it could be visual confirmation, it could be satellite imagery, I don't know. But just maybe if we wanted to list it out so that we can say like, these are the ways that we can like determine if waste is occurring.
So you'd like to include this in the code then?
I mean, I think
so
we're
that
at least going to talk to the
we can
legal team
identify
about it.
some tools that
Yeah,
be used
I
by
mean,
the
I just
city.
want to have that ability, especially as these like technologies are rapidly evolving, that like, I think we are going to be in a whole new world of seeing the data in a different way soon. And I want to be able to use that to the best of our ability.
Because the technology is changing so quickly, you might want language to the effect of including but not limited to.
Yes, exactly.
Including this list of
Yes.
examples, but not
Yeah.
limited to.
For sure. Yeah, exactly. Right now, it doesn't list anything on, like, we kind of operate under the assumption that we need to see it physically, but it doesn't really specify that. So we just want to maybe kind of clarify like how we are allowed to enforce for the future. And then I just wanted to highlight, oh, sorry, go ahead.
You might be able to have like 10 city drones that just patrol the
Exactly,
city.
just buzzing people in their yard.
That's just what I was gonna say, John.
Yeah.
Infrared drone photography at night.
Yeah, people are gonna love that. Um, I saw a few other sections of code that I just wanted to highlight really quick because I thought they were interesting. So, there is a provision in maybe statewide in Nevada, so they are going to prohibit the waters of the Colorado River from being used. Oh, thanks, Emily. My alarm's going off on my phone that's reminding me that I need to give my kid his strep throat medicine. So sorry. Um, Okay, so it's saying that the waters of the Colorado River cannot be used to irrigate non-functional turf. So that is, they actually have a definition. So it's irrigated grass that does not provide a functional use, such as streetscape turf, grass that's located along a street, in the median, doesn't provide a recreational benefit to the community. I think they're kind of like finessing this a little bit. They're going to start enforcing it in 2027. But this is like an area that we've talked about, like doing inventories in the town of like, where do we see areas of non-functional turf where it's just somewhere that nobody's using it? It's just for aesthetics. So I just wanted to highlight that at least one area is looking at saying no more. We're not doing any more non-functional turf. They also are prohibiting the installation of new grass. So I mentioned that they're actually saying like new commercial and residential developments cannot have grass. I think because of the supply issues that they're facing. They obviously are still permitting it at places like schools and parks and community uses, cemeteries for whatever reason. And then I also wanted to just highlight really quickly this HOA provision. So I'm going to read it in its entirety. It says, most government jurisdictions in the Las Vegas Valley have laws that prevent a HOA from restricting the installation of a water-saving landscape. An HOA may require homeowners to submit landscape design plans for approval. However, the HOA cannot require a homeowner to install grass, nor can it prohibit water-efficient landscapes. An HOA may restrict the use of some types of landscape materials, such as artificial turf. And then, just a clause about review your HOA policies. But this is a complaint that we pretty routinely receive, which is like, my HOA says I cannot get rid of my lawn. And the state was like considering action on this a number of years ago, and they did not move forward with it. And I've been kind of waiting to see if that was going to get traction. It seems like it's not going anywhere anytime soon. And so it might make sense for us to try to add a provision into the water conservation ordinance that says something similar to this. I mean, if we were going to say that it applies to existing HOAs, I think some people would be upset. But we hear people say routinely, like, I don't even want this lawn, but my HOA says I have to have it. And so if there was some way that we could give people an option to say, like, you cannot require me to have a lawn if I do not want one, I think that'd be beneficial to people. Yeah, Lee.
Thank you, Tamara. This topic actually came up during a social justice conversation because somebody was being kind of financially put out because of their water bill due to the HOA requiring grass.
Yeah. Yes, I think we would have to give the HOAs like maybe a year to come up with like new landscape design standards or something that would like meet their aesthetics and then provide that option to their residents. But it's something I would be interested in looking into if you think that it wouldn't like tank our whole process to add it in.
We don't currently have anything in the code that says you cannot install turf requirement for an HOA or anything.
No, I mean, there's nothing in our code that has any restriction in any way about turf, other than golf courses have to be irrigated with reclaimed.
We should.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes sense, but that's my job to think that.
Tamara, do we have any HOAs in town, do you know, that require turf?
Yes.
We do.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think I have a master list somewhere. I think there's maybe in the range of like 30 to 40 total HOAs, and maybe only 10 or fewer actually require turf, but they definitely do exist.
Okay. So this particular one then, this is going to involve some definition for Well, more than a definition, a paragraph or so forth in the code that talks about the advanced metering infrastructure or new tools that the city may be leaning towards using in
Yeah, I
order
think
to.
that one and this one probably is going to require us to meet with legal and really chat about like can this be drafted in a way that you know, is logical and effective and enforceable.
What about the HOAs?
I think for both, like I think both are going to require us to have like legal look at it and say like, are there any state laws that would restrict us from doing this, right? Like, so I'm sure you recall a little over 10 years ago, Flagstaff tried to pass a bag ban in the state, like rapidly enacted a state law that said like you cannot restrict I can't remember single-use containers or something was what they called it, but they like essentially prevented us from passing this type of legislation. So I think I would want to hear from legal, like, is there anything preventing us at this point from passing this type of law?
Could we restrict HOAs from mandating turf?
Exactly. That's all
That's
this says is like, can you pass a law that says that you cannot force someone to have a lawn?
right.
Yes.
Because a lot of the new development that I see does not have turf.
Yeah, and Aaron and I were saying that too, that like we have not been seeing new developments proposing it. And so really the question is like, is there a way we can write this that would not grandfather everything in? Because I feel like all the complaints right now are people that have an existing home and they want to transition it over to a low water landscape or a native plant garden or something and are being told that they can't. So this is the one piece that I think I would want to get feedback from the legal team on whether or not we could, you know, allow people that have existing lawns and existing HOAs to like be given a little bit more wiggle room. And if the answer is no, then it maybe doesn't even make sense to add it because I'm not seeing it in the future developments. Like people are not putting in big grass developments. I think, you know, the way we've been changing our development code has made that difficult.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're going to bounce that off of legal then?
Yeah. So I think I can give some of that feedback after we chat with them.
Okay. Sounds good.
Just a thought on that, and again, the legal folks will be the experts, but perhaps you could write it in a way to say, um, y- or to acknowledge that we can't go back and force them to change their existing code or existing HOA agreement. But if they revise their agreement, you know, any new revisions must eliminate the requirement for, um, you know, for turf.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because as far as I know, like HOA bylaws never come to the city for review, right? Like they're kind of like managed on their own. So I think it'd be challenging to even know if and when they were revising those like statutes, you know?
It would give you you know, for extreme cases, it might give you a lever though. I mean,
Yeah,
if you did
yeah.
have to do an investigation.
Yeah,
But
totally.
I would say just because you don't happen to see developments now with a lot of grass or any grass or turf, um, it wouldn't hurt to put that in for
Yeah,
future and
that's fair.
just, you know, protect against
Yeah,
the outlier case that might come along and
yeah.
make life difficult.
Try to make it a huge oasis zone.
Yes.
That's fair. I think that's all I have.
CCNRs, Tom, I don't know if you know, if you have the answer to this or not, but question comes to my mind is when a new development comes in, are those CCNRs, do they have to be approved by the city?
I don't know. Do you guys know? Emily doesn't think they have
You
to.
don't think they have to, so, okay.
It has to comply with the existing codes, obviously. Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah, I'm always curious about how those interplay too, because like I know, for example, my neighborhood, which was built in the 80s, I think it says on their CCNR, like we're not in an HOA, so nobody's enforcing it, but it says like you're not allowed to have chickens, which
Chicken?
many of my neighbors are disregarding, you know? Like who's allegedly supposed to be enforcing it and what happens when like, you know, the city updated its animal keeping code, you know, a while ago and said, you know, here's the number of chickens, whatever they're allowed to have. Like, I guess that still doesn't technically override the CCNR. Aaron thinks it does. Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Okay.
You're saying that CCRs need to comply with city codes. Maybe that's your lever, just to say that,
Yeah.
put it in the city code that no one can be required to have turf.
Yeah, maybe.
And,
Right.
Yeah.
uh,
I guess that's,
Yeah, and-
I'll ask legal about that.
yeah, but that may be the simplest way to handle it.
Yeah.
Have we, has there been an analysis done on subdivisions or that require turf, uh, per house use versus ones that don't?
Yeah, maybe Aaron, do you want to talk about your dashboard just a little bit that you started? Where she's like, no, I don't want to. So Aaron, and someone from GIS, I think we're trying to pull up like a dashboard looking at like each neighborhood individually to see like the kind of average per household use. And I think you do see those trends, like there are areas that are much more heavily grassed that like the, per household use is definitely higher. Anyway, it'll be when, if and when we were able to like fully develop that, I think. Yeah, Aaron's getting a new full-time staff person, so just pile that on their plate. They'll bring it here. We'll look at a really cool interactive map. Yeah.
Well, it just seems that if you had that data, then you could support making a change to no turf a lot
Yeah.
easier.
Yeah, totally. And I've said this a few times, but I do feel like we're on the cusp of a lot of new tools that are coming out on how we can quickly do these like data analysis trends. And I think, I think we're gonna learn a lot.
Great. Any other comments from the commission?
Thanks for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Erin has her hand up.
Thank you. Erin Young, Water Resources Section Director. I wanted to bring one more thing up through the Kyle Center. You might be aware of this, but they have a paper from September. It's 12 pages, how Arizona municipal water providers are regulating large volume water users. So it's essentially, in some cases, a lot of cases, the data centers. But I didn't know if it parallels with this topic on updating our code around, for the benefit of saving water. The Kyle Center is reaching out to municipalities to ask, what are you doing? And if you're not doing something, you should. And this is kind of geared at the active management areas and what's happening there, but definitely worth considering whether part of this conversation, which might be more irrigation focused. Just wanted to tag on to Tamara's agenda item here with that note. It's very interesting to read, and we could send a link.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, if you can send a link, that would be great.
Does it have a diagram or a map of active water use areas in northern Arizona?
So it has, it doesn't have a map of the active management areas around the state, but those are largely within the pretty populated areas. Phoenix, Tucson, Prescott, we're outside of an active management area. It talks about what the municipalities with a designation of assured water supply are doing. We're a designation of adequate water supply because we're outside the active management area.
Do you have to be in an active management area to prevent anybody from just, drilling a well wherever they want to drill a well? Or do you have to have a management area to prevent that?
The active management areas have more regulations on drilling groundwater wells, and they have grandfathered groundwater rights and such, which don't exist outside AMAs. But what municipalities have done is adopted an ordinance. In fact, Marana adopted one allowing no data centers or not allowing any data centers. Others have put provisions on how much water usage can occur with a data center. But outside the AMA, we could adopt an ordinance within our city limits or within our growth boundary, urban growth boundary. But it doesn't prevent somebody from going to an area in the county, a data center, and developing groundwater. I don't know if there are any resources for counties that might help with that.
Have any counties put in any regulations preventing data centers in the county, or?
I'm not aware of any just from reading this, though.
Yes, I think the I-40 corridor is a very likely area for data centers to be going in, so we're at risk.
And what, there are places where I'm sure that development can happen sustainably, let's say, or at least for 100 years without significant impact to water resources, let's say. But whether that can occur in Flagstaff, we'd have to have a discussion, but it's another talking point for code.
I was at a groundwater meeting last week, I think it was, and Supervisor Horstman mentioned that there were 2 locations in Coconino County that had been looking at data centers and the concern that existed because of that and the water use. Not Flagstaff, though.
Thank you for allowing me to tag on one more consideration.
Okay, Tamara, does that take care of it?
That does, thanks. And I also brought the cookies because it's Emily's birthday. So
Oh,
happy
happy
birthday,
birthday,
Emily.
Emily.
Thanks for coming to Water Commission on your
Oh.
birthday. 25.
Okay.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Tamara, is your process that you're going to develop proposed language and then bring it back to the commission?
Yeah. So my next step would be I'm going to meet with legal, come up with some draft language, and then circle back either December or January with a draft for your feedback.
Yeah, this is excellent. So
Thanks.
thank you for all of your efforts.
Yes. Okay, let's move on to item number 7, informational items, 2 from the chair, commission members or staff. Let's go around the commission first. Matthew, do you have anything? Rob?
I have one item, and it was in the minutes from our last meeting, our October meeting. And Aaron, this is coming to you. I wondered if there have been any progress on looking at, I believe it's C1.1, the city infrastructure, master plan relating to reclaimed water. And I think, as I pointed out at that time, it's wildly opposed to the direction we're now going, and I think needs to be revisited. And, along with the conservation plans.
That's a great point, and thank you for reminding me about that. I would say absolutely, once you all provide a recommendation to city council, we would propose at the same time what would need to be updated within our water policies, council adopted water policies. And there are a lot of updates we need to make within the policies, so.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'm glad. I think that does need attention because it's, written from a different era with a very different intent and doesn't reflect the way we're discussing things now. A second question, a different topic would be following up on the council's review of the Bureau of Reclamation plan, for the study for Red Gap Ranch. I'm curious whether Jacobs Engineering is still employed doing the, doing consulting work, or has that been stopped, pending what the Bureau of Reclamation comes up with? And I guess, Lee, I would be addressing that to you.
I apologize. I thought you were addressing Aaron on that one. The work is continuing. Jacobs Engineering is continuing to work on the project with us, and the Bureau is still engaged. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Well, I guess it does. I'm wondering, is that necessary? I mean, we've employed Jacobs Engineering for over a decade, I think. And does it make sense to be employing them while the Bureau of Reclamation is doing their work? I guess I'm asking what work is left unfinished for Jacobs to do?
Yes, I think they have the alignment down. They have a conceptual plan of the pipeline as needed and the pump stations that may be needed. There's not a lot of in-depth work being done. So there's going to be, there will need to be a lot more details added to the work that they've done. And then maybe Aaron can add a few more details if you don't mind, Aaron. But with the Bureau on board, it opens up some cost sharing opportunities so that the Bureau may be picking up some of the tab for Jacobs. But Aaron, please correct me if I'm incorrect.
Actually, I missed the question because I had to get some important details about something, but
No, do you need a repeat of the question?
please repeat.
Yeah, yes, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was asking, in essence, are we continuing to employ Jacobs Engineering for
Ah.
studies of our gap branch in parallel with now the Bureau of Reclamation proceeding with their own study? And if both are going in parallel, is this appropriate? Is it needed? You know, what are the remaining questions that Jacobs is looking at?
That's an excellent question. And in fact, I'm just working through that now. We are in phase 3 of the Jacobs contract, which I think we entered into in 2006 or so. And we're in phase 3, which is kind of environmental review, kind of the next steps in preparing for an EIS. And there are parallels with the work we're doing with the Bureau of Reclamation and preparing for an EIS through like the appraisal study lens. So we're evaluating whether we need a new scope with Jacobs. And then we have to look at the original contract and whether we have to procure again or if it allows us to stick with Jacobs because they have a lot of knowledge of everything that they've been involved in. So we have to work with our procurement team on that. Yeah, did that answer your question?
Yes, yeah, sounds like it
We're at the
needs continuing attention.
Yeah, well, yeah, we're at the tail end of their contract. They completed phase 1 and phase 2, and now we're in phase 3. And I haven't looked at the language to know for sure that it aligns with the next effort with the Bureau.
Yeah, I would just not wanting to see, duplication of efforts here.
We're actually being very careful to not duplicate effort. So the Bureau recognizes that, all the detailed work that has been done and wanting to capitalize on that and not repeat it. Absolutely. And we were careful in working with Jacobs to align with Bureau criteria for things like appraisal studies as much as possible. We went into the contract with Jacobs expecting to work with the Bureau at some point. And the Bureau staff at the time encouraged us to do that. It helps us be eligible for federal funding.
Aaron, it's my understanding that the work that's being done is kind of geared towards making the Red Gap Ranch project more of a regional project than its initial thoughts. And if that's the case, it is going to require additional engineering for sure, design work and so forth. Would that be Jacobs or would that be Reclamation?
And that is the question that we will address
Okay.
in the appraisal study.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Go ahead.
Okay, I guess this qualifies as a third question. During the discussion, the joint meeting with the Water Commission and Council, when we were hearing from the Bureau of Reclamation, some of us, or I guess I made the point that if the city only just studies this alternative and we come to an end of a year and haven't just looked at any other alternatives, that will be the only choice on the table. And I guess I'm concerned that we're not moving in parallel with anything close to the scope of effort, looking at the other alternatives. And so I guess the question comes down to, are there any plans at all in place to put a comparable level of effort into looking at direct potable reuse or other alternatives for the next increment of water capacity for Flagstaff?
Thank you for the question. So one thing the Bureau makes very clear is that they will not execute a large project without evaluating alternatives. And so included in the scope of work for an appraisal study is an assessment of the other opportunities. And we have been exploring other opportunities but we haven't been forced to make a decision yet. So what's wonderful is everything is on the table. There, and really looking at this through the regional lens is the opportunity to partner with other agencies, which may lead, Lee, you mentioned cost sharing. There could be a benefit of cost share with the Bureau and with other entities in the region that drives that cost per unit uh, to a point where it fits within our future portfolio quite nicely, or it could offer benefits that other supplies do not have. It's our intent to recycle our water, that remaining volume of water, do something very smart with that. It's a large volume. Um, so we'll just see how all these projects fit together. We'll have those discussions with City Council for sure. So, and council will ask that question, what are the alternatives here? Um, so,
Okay, well, I
Yeah.
just brought it up in essence as a cautionary note that my perception is that the Bureau of Reclamation is, their allegiance is to a regional plan, which may or may not turn out to be the best decision for Flagstaff. So um, enough said. Thank you.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, we're still on informational items. John?
Well, I'll second what the direction Rob was going also. Really, at this point, I think.
Okay, I don't have much to add. I will mention that I found out today that ADWR is going to help us with funding some modeling work that the partnership's doing for the Coconino and the Red Wall Moab Aquifer. It was a long shot that I went after some money with them, and I got the word today they're going to come through. So that's good news. Always good news. Lee, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Vice Mayor Sweet? Nothing? If not, I guess we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you all.